All right, we're live. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here with Waylon, the Red Rooster, Fortner, and Pastor Will Ramsey. He's a follower of Christ, husband, and father who has a powerful message to share with the world. Will Ramsey is a pastor who's found his calling in encouraging and uplifting others. He's also the author of A Father's Journey Through Darkness, Growth from the Loss of a Son. Pastor Ramsey, thank you for joining us tonight. We're calling this Rooster and Doc Sunday Night Live. So
nice.
Welcome.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate y'all asking me to come on.
Just start by giving us a little background about yourself and tell our audience who you are.
Well, so I grew up in Lebanon, Ohio. Well, let me rephrase that. So I started out in Lebanon, Ohio. I lived there till I was about 16, and then I moved to Washington Courthouse with my mother, and ended up graduating from high school there. Went in the military, and was in the military for 4 years. In the meantime, got married and had a few kids, and we split. And so basically, I've got 3 children. I have my daughter, Madison, who's my youngest. I have my daughter, Marissa, who's my middle daughter. And then I have my son, Brock, who is forever 29. I lost him 34 months ago to a drug overdose. So I lived in Lebanon on and off for a few years, and also lived in some different areas. And right now I'm in Canyon Lake, Texas. There's a whole story behind that. So there's a whole story behind that.
What brought you to Texas? Because I don't know if you know where Schertz is yet.
I do. Actually, it's not very far from me.
Yeah.
It's right around the corner.
So I lived
probably 20 miles from here.
Yeah. I lived in Schertz for about 3 years, and it's just a great area. What brought you to Texas?
So here's the story that I like to tell folks. So so basically lost Brock to a drug overdose on February 11th, 2020. And so we had his funeral on the 15th of February, which was a Saturday. And so on that Sunday, I woke up. Well, I didn't really go to sleep, to be honest with you. I probably slept a couple hours, got up, went to my office. I'm sitting at my desk. I'm having probably one of the worst mornings of my life, if not the worst morning of my life. And, just not really, just kind of in a black fog. And all of a sudden I hear the voice of God say, you need to go Facebook Live. Now, let's be clear. It wasn't a Facebook Live guy to be first off, even when I was in a good frame of mind. He's asking me to do this the day after my son's funeral at 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm literally wearing basically what I have on, other than had a beanie hat on. And he's asking me to go Facebook Live, and I look like death warmed over and look like I've been hit by a truck. And so we argued for 15 minutes, basically telling him no, and wouldn't let it go. And finally, so I went Facebook Live for the very first time. Not first time, I'm saying for that particular reason. And I talked about Psalms 23, and I rambled a little bit and talked about how I was going to be raw and be real and share what was going on with me, and basically talked about Psalms 23. It lasted about 7 minutes. It was a little awkward and a little kind of weird. And I thought, okay, well, that's over with. And, I logged off, and God said, okay, now you're going to do this once a week, every Friday. And so great. Awesome. Don't know how this is going to work out, but I started doing it once a week on Fridays, which was my day off. And then COVID hit about a month later. And so God told me that, well, now you're going to do it 3 times a week. So I started doing it Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And basically what it was originally called The Morning Word with Will. Now you see Word of Hope with Will, and I'm trying to get the church in there. So that's why I changed it to The Word of Hope with Will.
Sure.
But so to make a short story really long, so about a month after I started doing them, a guy from Texas started sharing them with his employees. He ran a dealership. His name is Alex Flores, and he runs and owns dealerships down here. And at the time, he owned a couple dealerships in a couple different areas, and I won't mention where or why, because he's no longer with those dealerships, and I don't want to stir anything up. So
Sure.
he was sharing them with his employees. So I got really excited, ran downstairs to my wife, Julie, and said, "Oh my gosh, a guy from Texas is sharing my videos." And I'll be honest with you, Dallas Cowboys and the Houston Texans, that's what I knew about Texas. I mean,
Right.
the Alamo, I mean, I knew the history, but I'd never been there, never visited. So, God just started putting Texas on my heart. And honestly, I was going to go down there in January because he had invited me a month later after he started sharing my videos. He invited me to a Zoom Bible study on Wednesdays called Car Church. And I started attending that about 6 weeks after I started attending, and he asked me to help lead it. And I'm still doing that to this day. And then in the meantime, God just really started putting Texas on my heart. So I was going to go down in January. So that was through 2020. I was going to go down in January of 2021 and check everything out. My wife's like, "Whoa, slow down there, Hoss."
They'll do that.
Well, no, she didn't want me to go down without her, because I was going to go. I was just going to catch a flight and go down and check things out. I wasn't going to stay. I was just going to go check things out and have a little vacation and all this. And she's like, "Wait a minute, can we go together? Could we do that?" I'm like, "Well, yeah." She goes, "Well, we'll wait till May." So we did. We went down for our anniversary. Best vacation we ever had. Fell in love with the area. We spent a day in Austin, came down to San Antonio, spent, 3 days down in San Antonio. And then we went down to Port Aransas. Got to say it right.
Oh, yeah.
Port Aransas. And we spent 4 days down there and had the best vacation we ever had in our entire lives, and fell in love with Texas and fell in love with the area. And here I am. So,
yeah. So you've experienced I-35.
Oh, yes. Very familiar with I-35. 281 is under construction, and that's a nightmare. So that's
281 is.
That probably won't be done until 2024 or 2025. So that's fun.
Yeah, there's a lot of great things about that area in Texas in general, especially when you're so when I was in Schertz, I was like 25 minutes from San Antonio, 50 minutes from Austin. So you're right there. There's so much to do. The people are amazing.
Yes, they are.
How are you adjusting down there?
Well, so Julie's not down here yet. We're working on that. That's going to happen the 15th of December. I'm headed back. I'm flying back. We're getting a U-Haul on the 18th. It's getting loaded on the 19th, and then we're headed back down. So I've been adjusting pretty well. It's being a pastor and coming down here and kind of starting from the ground up and starting from, just base ground level. It can be a little challenging, to be honest. We're still.
What are some of the challenges that you're facing?
Oh, well, I'm here by myself. I'm in my home by myself. Julie's not here. So I basically, I tell people about my setup here. I'm sitting at basically a 4 foot by 2 foot wide desk. My computer basically everything I have is sitting on it. I have a couch downstairs with a TV tray next to it, and I have a TV. So that's everything I have in the house. And then I got a mattress that I sleep on.
Right.
So I'm sleeping on the floor. I lost my full-time employment a month ago. So basically my full-time employment right now is the church. I have a partnership with an F&I product provider brokerage firm that I'm doing on the side as a part-time gig to earn money for my family. But obviously I don't have any money coming in yet. So that's one of the challenges that I'm facing. So, I mean, it's just, and to tell the story, if you don't mind how I got down here. So Julie was actually putting this at arm's length. She wasn't quite ready to go in on the Texas thing. I don't want to make it sound like, oh yeah, that sounds like a great idea, honey. Let's do that. That's not how it went down.
No, it's a big adventure.
Yeah, that's not how it went down at all. She actually was cautiously okay with it, but she wanted me to have a job first, and she wanted to have a house first, and she wanted to have all these things first before we actually did it. So I did an assessment with the Send Network, which is a church planning network through the North American Mission Board. and we got assessed, and they asked us to do a reassessment. So that took about a year, and we did that, and we got approved and everything. So the plan was to do an internship with Engaged City Church in Huber Heights, which I was the associate pastor there for 5 years and the care pastor. And so the plan was to do an internship there and do that for 6 months. And then we were going to look at it in 6 months and head down to Texas. And that was kind of all based on Julie's feelings a little bit that, hey, let's kind of ease into this and not rush into anything and do anything like that. I'm like, okay, that's no problem. Because we wanted us to both be on the same page. Well, things kind of progressed. And so she's like, well, wait a second, instead of waiting 6 months, why don't you, I had a trip planned to go see a friend of mine on my birthday. She goes, well, why don't you change your trip to go to Texas in October instead of going down to Florida and check things out and kind of get a feel for the area and kind of get a feel for stuff, and then come back and then we'll talk about it. And then if we still feel like everything's good in 6 months, we'll go do it. I was like, okay, no problem. So middle of September, I think it was a Friday. I call them bad Brock mornings. After losing my son, in the very beginning, it was really tough, but it's gotten less and less. Thankfully, God's helped me walk through it. But I was having a bad Brock morning on a Friday, and she was having some issues. So we woke up at it was crazy. We woke up at 4:30, and we're both kind of crying and talking through things. Well, I get up and go do my video. Well, she starts watching. Are you guys familiar with Rock City Church? Have you heard anything about them? Do you know about them? Out of Columbus?
It sounds familiar, but I can't put my finger on it.
In Monroe, or out in Monroe toward Trader's World?
No, that's Rock City in Monroe. This is in Columbus. And it's Chad Fisher. Well, he's preaching. At the time he was preaching sermons on he called them the gems of Genesis. Well, I went upstairs, did my video. Well, Julie decided to watch one of his taped sermons, and he was preaching on Abram. Abraham, how he just picked up and left.
Right.
And, so I'm catching bits and pieces of it as I come downstairs. I'm getting ready for work. And so I'm literally getting adjusted, getting ready to walk out the door. And she says, hey, by the way, come here. And I said, okay. And she goes, you're getting ready to leave? And I said, yeah. She goes, well, why don't you go into work and give your notice? And here in a week and a half, why don't you just go ahead and head to San Antonio? So I basically quit my job.
Wow.
Went and loaded my car on the 26th of September and jumped in it on the 27th. And I have a friend that lived down here at the time. He said I could stay with him. So I basically came down with no employment, solid employment, and no place to live other than that pastor's house. And came down here and got things started. So
awesome.
All by God.
So where is Hope City Church now?
So Hope City Church is in Canyon Lake, Texas, which is just north. I guess it's a little northeast of San Antonio. It's a lake just northeast of San Antonio. The plan is to plant it somewhere close to our home or somewhere in between Canyon Lake and New Braunfels. There's a few little towns out there. Startsville is one. Stattersville is one, or Statters, is one. There's a couple little towns. So we're gonna kind of feel things out over the next 6 months. The plan is to launch in September. So that's the plan. So
excellent.
So we're right now we're just the plan is to get settled here in December. In January, start trying to assemble a team, start praying through people and starting to get involved in the community and start, getting a Bible study together and start getting some different things going so we can get some people here and then start assembling a team from there and then doing different things and then hopefully get a plan together where we can get things launched in September. So that's kind of the
awesome
quick turn on the plan. So
you're doing you're doing
what's that, Waylon?
Like a house to house. You're just going to start out and have little small Bible study, try to gather who you can.
That's kind of the plan. We'll probably start a Bible study in our house and start that way. and then we'll just expand from there.
Yeah.
As word gets out, we're going to go out into the community too and get involved. There's a lot of community events around here, and so the plan is to get involved with those community events and kind of integrate those into what we're doing, and hopefully people will find out who we are through that as well. And I'll start doing more Facebook Lives gauged towards the church. Excuse me. Right now, it's just me, and I'm here just by myself in this house. So as time goes on, we'll start doing more Facebook Lives that are gauged more towards the church and what we're doing and how we're doing things, letting the community know we're coming and that kind of thing. And just kind of probably getting a lot more involved in social media so people will see and see what's coming. So
good.
Definitely. Have you been to Landa Park there in New Braunfels yet?
I've driven past it a couple of times, actually. So we have the way this thing is working out. See, Texas. So Send Network is part of the North American Mission Board, and Send Network is a church planning network, and that's what we're a part of. And so we had in Texas. So Send Cincinnati and Send Texas are like two different things, and they don't communicate. So basically what had to happen is we had to be part of we had to have a sponsor church. We have a sending church, which is Engage up in Huber Heights, Ohio, Pastor Day.
Right.
And so that's our sending church, but our sponsor church has to be they call it an SBTC church, which is a Southern Baptist Texas Convention church, which works with Send down in Texas. So we are sponsored by a church by the name of Freedom Hill Church, and that's over off of Eisenhower Drive, which is literally you drive through Schertz to get there, and you drive by Landa Park. So I've driven by it a couple of different times, but I haven't been there yet.
It's a good place to go visit. They got a train and
awesome.
And paddle boats and all kinds of cool
My
stuff.
wife's going to love to hear that. She's ready to get down here so she can take me all these different places because she wants to go and check out all this different stuff. So absolutely.
Yeah, it's awesome. So let's dive a little deeper. Go ahead, Waylon.
What I was just going to ask, I heard a couple of different like affiliations and some different names you've been telling us about. Is it a particular denomination, or is it more of a non-denominational?
So we're non-denom. We're autonomous, but we're backed by the Southern Baptist. Send is part of the Southern Baptist Convention. So we're going to be we have Baptist beliefs, but we're basically non-denom and autonomous.
Okay, gotcha. So and kind of follow up with that. So what are you most out of all? I mean, there's a lot of doctrines out there, and not to get into a lot of those. What's your favorite thing to teach and preach on? I mean, I know everybody's got as a fellow preacher. I know everybody's got that zeal. So
if you watch my videos,
okay.
I actually got called up on the stage today. I went to Freedom Hill today and got called up on the stage. And, my favorite thing the gospel, and I know that sounds pretty generic, but I mean, so everything, and I'm not to get too deep into it because I can get pretty passionate and pretty hard on it, but
right.
Everything else is important, but the finished work of Jesus Christ on the cross is what our faith is based on. I mean, that's it. So to talk about the gospel and to talk about what Jesus did for us,
right,
and to make sure that people hear it and understand it and know what it is, that's more important to me than anything else. I mean, I had a guy I worked with at a car dealership, and there was a guy that he's like, well, what about eschatology, and what about this, and what about that? And I looked at him, I said, well, what about it?
Right.
So if they don't know Jesus, none of that matters.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that's the bottom line. If the person doesn't know Jesus, the end times don't matter.
Right. Yeah.
Theology doesn't matter if you don't know about Jesus. That's the bottom line. So, I mean, that's that. So to answer your question, that's it. I'm the simplicity of the gospel guy. Right. That's who I am.
Yeah. If you can't get them to see Jesus, then the rest of it doesn't matter anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm with you. All the other stuff's fun, and there's a place for it. But yeah, if you can't get them to see Jesus, the rest of it, you're wasting your time.
If you're not talking about giving your life to Jesus every every chance you have and every service you have, then
Yeah.
you are wasting your time.
Yep.
I mean, that's just what are you doing it for if you're not sharing the gospel?
Exactly.
I mean, that's the bottom line. So
How did you become interested in becoming a pastor?
So back in, oh my goodness, I'm not going to date myself, guys. I think we're all about the same age, though. So back
I'm
when I was
45.
okay, I'm a little bit older than you guys. Shh. I'm not going to say my age because my wife will shoot me if I do. So anyway,
45 and a half.
yeah, we'll go with that. How's that? So back in the day, and you guys are not that much younger than me. So back in the day, in the 80s, it was all about checking boxes and all this stuff. And so I got saved when I was 13. And so I got saved in Northside Baptist Church in Lebanon, Ohio, and got saved and baptized and all that good stuff. And then I was attending a little church in Middletown called Calvary Baptist Church. And that's where I felt the calling on my life to become a pastor. And so I was going through everything I could to become a pastor when I was young. The problem is that in my heart, I felt like I was ready to be a pastor, but in my mind, I was not. There was just I wasn't focusing on the right things. I was too focused on women, and I was too focused on basketball and self gratification instead of focused on the gospel. And so when I got to be about 20 years old, when I realized I couldn't check all the boxes that I felt like needed to be checked as far as living a perfect life, I just said, to heck with it. And I ran. I'm an all in or all out type of guy.
Yeah.
So, and they didn't teach grace back in the 80s, unfortunately, or at least they did, but they didn't talk about what it was and what it meant. And so I didn't pick up on it. And so, and I'm not blaming anybody for that. That was just me being stubborn and not really listening very well. And so I just ran. And for 20 years, I ran. And, God put a calling on my life when I was 16, but just because I didn't follow it doesn't mean that it's not still there. So when I rededicated my heart to Christ back in 2010, the calling was still on my life. God just picked up right where I left off. Yeah. Actually, what happened was I was in a church out in Iowa. God took me to Iowa to find him again. And I'm sitting in church, and my wife had made me go. And that's a true story. I mean, that's a whole nother story. She gave me an ultimatum, either go to church or we're done. And there was a lot of things that led up to that. And I hadn't been to church in 20 years, not willingly anyway. And so we're sitting in the back, and we go one Sunday, and she'd come to Iowa with me based on that, me saying I'd go to church. So we're sitting there in church, and she starts crying because she's missing home. So we leave. So that was the first Sunday. Well, the second Sunday, we went to a different church, which was a lot like the one she had back in Ohio. Well, we left again because she was homesick. So the first two Sundays that I said I was going to go to church, I wasn't there 10 minutes total. So I was like, hey, this is going to be easy. I can go home, drink beer, and watch football. So the third one, we went back to the original church we'd went to, and she made it through the service, and we ended up staying, but nothing major really happened. Well, then we went back the next Sunday, and that's when God started working on my heart, because the pastor started preaching on, your calling on your life and how you should follow it and all this stuff. And he ran a series for like 4 or 5 weeks. Well, so we're sitting if we'd have sat any further in the back, we'd have been out in the foyer. And so the first week it started working, Holy Spirit started working on my heart, and, we're sitting in the back. Well, the next week we move up a little closer. And then the next week after that, we move a little closer. And then next week after that, we move a little closer and a little closer. Well, by the 5th or 6th week, we're sitting up 2 rows from the front, and I've been bawling every service that we go in there. And my wife's looking at me like I'm out of my mind, because I'm this hard card guy that hadn't been, that didn't cry about anything. And I'm sitting here bawling like a baby, looking like, snot coming out everywhere. And finally she goes, what is going on with you? I said, I have no idea, but I'm done fighting this. I'm back. I'm giving my heart back to Jesus. I'm done. And what it was is he's preaching on a calling, and I'm sitting here thinking I'm not worthy because of everything that I'd done. And God basically said, stop worrying about what you've done. Just worry about what you're going to do. Stop worrying about who you were and start worrying about who you are. And so that's what all that came from, is that the reason I was bawling is because I was thinking I wasn't qualified, and God's like, I'm the one that qualifies you. You need to stop worrying about what other people think and just do what I've called you to do. So that's what I'm doing.
You were running like Jonah for a while.
Oh, 20 years.
Do you know what
20 years.
brother in church tonight? Do you know what he preached on tonight?
What's that?
The book of, I mean, it's perfect. I had no idea that your testimony was gonna, I mean, basically you were a living Jonah.
Absolutely.
Day. So that's pretty wild. I mean, he knows how to get in touch with you, don't he?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I was a mess. It was funny. I told people that story, and when I was preaching a sermon, and the problem is that people think that it's up to us to decide what we can do and what we can't do. And God's already made the decision.
Right.
You just got to go with what God decides.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, and the funny thing is, you pick up right where you left off, just like Jonah. I mean, literally, he got thrown up on the very place he should have been to begin with. So,
Absolutely.
He can restore you like that fast if you just get willing. And it took you 20 years to get willing, but
Yeah.
you got, yeah.
The funny thing about it is, just to go off what you're talking about, Waylon, picking up where I left off, I gave my heart back to Christ, and all my wife had known was the old Will, the old guy that I used to be. So when I started talking Bible and started talking about all these different things, she looked at me and goes, I've been in church all my life and I don't know that stuff. What are you, where did, I said, well, sweetheart, I was in school before I walked away. I mean, I read the Bible, I'd learned things. It wasn't like I'm just, this non-Bible reading guy that just all of a sudden decided to start following Jesus. I mean, I read the Bible. I learned stuff when I was young. She's like, oh. So it was kind of funny.
Those 20 years, and you don't have to explain anything, but if it doesn't bother you, what is it that got you for those 20 years? Was it what part of the world got a hold of you? Because you know how
all of it.
Yeah.
All of it. How's that? No, I was in the car business for 25 years. So if you know anything about car guys,
yeah.
Well, first things first. So I was in the military for 4 years. I wasn't following Jesus while I was in the military, so that's self-explanatory right there.
It's hard to do.
I was a drinker. I was a partier. I was a runner. I was and then when I got out of the military and I did construction for a few years, but then I got into the car business. I mean, what I did in the military just carried over into the car business. So I was a hard charging, hard working, hard partying car guy for 20 plus years. Yeah. So, I mean, that's just everything. I mean, women, money, power, status. I mean, name it, name everything. The only thing I never got into was drugs, but I drank like a fish. I mean, I for whatever reason, because of my history with my former first wife, who was a drug addict, drugs were something that I wouldn't do or get involved with. But I drank like a fish. I mean, I had a very, very serious alcohol problem. Extremely serious alcohol problem.
Everybody's got a candy. They just got to figure out what it is. And the bad part is, once you figure out what it is, it's hard to let go of.
Well, God, it's funny how God took that from me. Because when I rededicate my life, I mean, I'll be the first to tell you, I didn't quit smoking right away. I didn't quit drinking right away. And the funny thing of it is God gave me two things that caused me to quit both things that were based on what I wanted, but in the end, it's what God wanted me to do. He just used what was important to me to get me to stop doing them. And one was my job. The first one was my job for smoking. And believe it or not, the second one was golf or drinking. So,
yeah.
So I know that sounds weird, but it's true. Golf got me to quit drinking. Believe it.
Wow.
So. Usually it's the other way around, but.
So You've made the move out to Texas.
Yes.
What was your time like at Engage City Church? Because I watch Engage City Church all the time, and that's where I found you actually.
Yes.
And I've watched you preach over there, and I
Thank
watched
you.
Pastor Doug preach over there, and I mean, you guys are some convicting preachers where you're watching and you're like, oh man, I got to fix that. I got to fix that. I shouldn't have did that. Okay, I got to do better. So,
right.
What's your history with Engage and all that good stuff? Because I still watch it today. I watched it this morning. I put it up on the big screen. So
nice.
Yeah.
No, Gage, we owe a lot to Pastor Doug and Chrissy and Engage City Church. So the way that all started is and there's a whole nother story behind that. So I was going to Capital City Baptist out in Iowa. That's where I rededicated my heart to Christ. And so Julie and Brock had gotten, before Brock died, he had a major overdose back in 2012 and he almost died. And so we had decided to move back to Ohio from Iowa to basically help him hopefully find Jesus. And there's a whole nother story behind that. But in the meantime, the church that we were attending out there, a really, really good friend of Julie's, his brother was the family pastor at Capital City Baptist out there. So while he was there while we were there, and he had decided to deputize for the mission field. Well, the week that we had decided we were coming back to Ohio, he ended up coming back for a visit. Julie couldn't go to church that Sunday. Maddie, my daughter, Julie dropped her off and went home to get ready for me to come and take things apart so we could move. She runs into him. Maddie does. He hands her a sticky note with the church's name on it and says, "You're headed back to Ohio. Go to this church." Well, it was Heritage Baptist Church in Lebanon, Ohio. We end up going, but Pastor Doug wasn't there yet, and the youth group was kind of small. So we were like, yeah. So we ended up going to a church in Franklin for a while, and we found out that they didn't really align with our values. So we ended up going back to Heritage. Well, the Sunday we went back to Heritage was the very first Sunday that Doug was there. And Maddie met him, fell in love with him. Maddie was like 12 at the time. Maddie met him, fell in love with him. And so we decided, okay, well, this is where we're going to come. So we ended up joining Heritage. We just moved our membership from Capital to Heritage. Found out that the associate pastor, Rich Harrison, knew Dwayne, who had given us the sticky note. I mean, there's a whole,
wow,
the way God moved the pieces to put us at Heritage.
Right.
So I could meet Doug. I mean, if I could sit here and talk to you for an hour about that, because it's just crazy. I mean, just the way God went, okay, this goes here, this goes here, this goes here, and this is what's going to happen. And that's basically what happened. So I met Doug at Heritage back in 2012. He was the team leader, team pastor. I got on the fit team. I wasn't ordained yet. Was talking about becoming a pastor, but hadn't really, really pursued it that hard. In 2015, I was sitting at my kitchen table and I heard a voice say, "Go to McDonald's." I know that sounds really weird, but on the way to McDonald's, I heard a advertisement for Colorado Christian University and their scholarship program. And believe it or not, so I was like, okay, well, I'm supposed to do this. So I came home and called and signed up. And that's where I got my biblical studies degree from, was Colorado Christian University. So that's how I got my biblical studies degree, was by going to McDonald's one morning. In the meantime, I graduated in 2015. In 2016, Doug, in April of 2016, Doug says, "Hey," and I was helping with the youth a little bit at Heritage, and I was on the fit team, First Impressions team, where everybody meets, and then eventually started running it. But it was funny. Doug calls me, says, "Hey," he goes, "meet me at McDonald's over on 73. He goes, "I want to talk to you about something." I was like, okay. So we would meet for breakfast every couple of weeks anyway. So we meet over there, and he's like, "Hey," I said, "just want to let you know, come May, end of May, that's going to be my last month at Heritage." He said, "And in June, we're going to head up, me and Chrissy are going to head up to Huber Heights, and we're going to start preparing to launch a church up there." And I say, "Excuse me?" He's like, "Yeah, I just want to check with you and see where your head's at. No pressure. no pressure. I just want to, that's his favorite line.
Right.
No pressure. No pressure. And he goes, I just want to see where your head's at. And I was like, okay, well, yeah, I'm in. I got to talk to Julie, but I'm in. I don't know what she's going to say. So we talked a little bit more. And so the funny thing about it is 2 weeks before that, Doug had preached. And Julie, you come home from church, you're changing out of church clothes and that kind of stuff. And Julie looks at me and goes, if he ever leaves, we're going with him. I said, okay, cool. So I pull out McDonald's and I call her up and said, hey, you remember what you told me 2 weeks ago? She's like, what? I said, about Doug leaving. She goes, yeah, what about it? I said, well, he's leaving. No. So yeah. So I basically was doing Heritage and Engage when Engage first started, both at the same time. Julie was still going to Heritage. What I would do is I'd start out with the early service, get the fit team going, go to the early service at Heritage. It would quit about 10 o'clock. I'd get they had a 10:30 service. I'd get the 10:30 fit team started. And then I'd jump in the car and run up to Huber Heights, and I'd help Doug get the pre-launch services for Engage going. So that's kind of how I started with Engage. And then
awesome.
We launched on September 16th in 16, or no, was it 16 or the 18th? It was one of those days in 16. And then, I got ordained in 17 and was the associate and care pastor until I left on the 27th of September.
That's got to be hard to leave. Right?
It is. And especially seeing, it's funny. I told him, I said, it's awful funny. I'm leaving and now all of a sudden you all got a building. Because I showed up every Sunday morning at between 8 and 8:30 to help set up for 6 years. And now they don't have to set up anymore.
Right.
After I leave.
Right.
After I leave. So, yeah. But
right.
No, seriously, I'm super excited for them. And I can't, I wish them nothing but the best. And I'm not going to lie. It's tough to leave. I mean, it was my home for 6 years. So, but God's got a calling on our lives, and that we got to follow that calling. So,
well, talk to us a little bit about your book you're writing, or is it already written, completed, or?
I finished it a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
It's with the publisher right now. So basically, what it is, it's a guide through the first 33 or 34 months of my journey. And it literally was a journey through darkness. The first 10 months I talk about it. That's where when I do my videos, and I'm sure you guys have watched them, where I say, brought to you by #Focus Forward.
Right.
Focus Forward. So to give you a background, I lost Brock on February 11th, 2020. We had the funeral. So I walked around with a smile on my face for 9 months, acting like everything was okay, and it wasn't. I was in the deepest, darkest depression I'd ever been in my life. I felt like, I felt like I wanted to die. Now, would I have taken my own life? No. There's no way I would have done that, but I just I didn't, it's like I tell people, it's easy, easy things are easy until they're not. You would think getting up in the morning was pretty easy. Lose a child and then try it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to get up. Didn't want to go to work. Little things would set me off. I didn't want to hear people at work. I was in the car business. I was a sales manager at a car dealership. I found out. So just to give you a little background on that. So I was at work when I found out that Brock died.
No.
And I was at my desk. So I was sitting at my desk. I made the mistake, instead of walking outside and talking on the phone, I walked back up to the sales desk and sat down at my chair that I sat in all to work deals and the whole 9 yards. So I'm sitting in my chair at the sales desk when the police officer tells me that my son has passed.
Mm.
So I had to go sit in that chair every single day after that. I went to work every day.
Right.
So that was in and of itself a challenge to get up. I knew I had to get up and go to work, and work is where I found out that my son had died.
Mm.
So that was a challenge in and of itself. So for 10 months, basically from February into December, I was struggling struggling.
You're
hard.
reliving that moment over and over.
Yeah, struggling hard. I was going to counseling. I was seeing a counselor. And then in October, I found out my dad had cancer and he was dying in the meantime. So it was a plethora and a deluge of just darkness. You know, I was just getting kicked from every side. And then there was things happening at work. And I won't get into details, but there was, you know, things said and it was just not a good situation. And so middle of December, I'm sitting in my office. It's the morning and I just hear God tell me, you gotta stop. You gotta fix this. You're on a bad road. And, you know, he tells me, he says, you got to find a phrase or find a word or find something that's going to get you out of this funk that you're in. And so that's where Focus Forward came from. Okay. And I put a hashtag on the front of it and hashtag Focus Forward. So, and what I use for that phrase is, you know, there's, the reason that the windshield is so big is so you can focus in front of you and what's in front of you. Can't drive a car looking in the rearview mirror.
Right.
So I was spending all my time focusing on the moment that Brock died and focusing on things that were happening in the past instead of focusing on what was in front of me. And so that's why I say what I say, you know, focus forward on what's in front of you and what God has for you, not long back over your shoulder, what's behind you, what you've lost or what you might have left behind. You don't forget about, I'm never going to forget about my son, ever.
Right.
Never going to forget who he was. I'm never going to forget the relationship we had. I'm never going to forget him as a person.
Is he your firstborn son?
He's my only son and my firstborn son. Yes.
Right.
Yep. And, you know, so we had a tumultuous relationship over the years, but we had mended it and we were, you know, it was one of those things where, you know, he'd call me for advice and message me for things. And, you know, it was just, it was growing into that father-son relationship that guys want. And, but the problem is that he struggled with drugs. He was a drug addict and he was, you know, he had an addiction. He got addicted to drugs. His mother got him addicted to drugs when he was 14.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
His own mother. So she got him addicted to pills when he was 14 years old. And when she died, or right before she died, he had graduated to heroin. And in the meantime, I think he got her hooked on heroin. So they kind of flip-flop back and forth. He had went to heroin first, and then I think he got her over on doing heroin because I believe, pretty certain that's what killed her. She got into a car accident. But so basically what happened is the Focus Forward is kind of just what, well, not kind of, God using that phrase is what's gotten me through the last 23 months. After that December, you know, I got to focus forward. I got to focus forward. I got to focus forward. You know, and I had a guy ask me, well, what does that mean? Well, you got to stop. If you stay stuck in the moment and it doesn't matter what you've lost. It doesn't matter if you've lost a person, if you've lost your job, whatever you've lost, you know, you can't change what's happened behind you. You can't change it. All you can do is change what's in front of you. You have to change it. And you have to do that through the power of God. You know, God's in control. We're not in control. God's in control. And if you think you're in control, you're just lying to yourself and fooling yourself because you're not.
So how does somebody look at tragedy, something that's so tragic like that, losing a son, and cling to Christ? How do you make that happen?
So the way it did happen, everybody's different. Everybody grieves different. Everybody deals with loss differently. I mean, there's no cookie cutter way to do it. And I learned that early on. But the thing that helped me, and I mean, so I remember the night that Brock died. Well, the night that I found out that he died, I went home. I called my daughter, my wife, because Maddie was in college and she was actually at Wright State and Julie was at work. And so I called them both. I said, get in the car and start driving. I said, what's going on? I said, I'm not going to tell you where you're at. You need to both get in your cars and drive to the house. And so once they got to the house, I told them what was going on. And we all went to different rooms and started crying and whatever. And so I'm sitting at my desk in my office And I remember sitting there and just in utter disbelief that this was happening. And the question I asked every person that loses someone, a child or a parent, the question is why?
Right.
And the answer is why not? Because I'm not any more special than anybody else. You'd be shocked how many people around you have lost children.
Sure.
So the answer is why not? Because I'm not any more special than anybody else. But the thing that really struck me, and I firmly believe this was the Holy Spirit speaking to me, is that, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about Brock and I'm thinking about losing him. And just the next thought that pops into my head was God watched his son die on the cross.
Mm.
And that's made to this moment, almost 34 months later, that still makes the same impression on me as it did the night that I thought it. I lost my son, but God watched his son die for the world on a cross. Yeah. So that's how I've gotten through it, and that's how I've clung to my faith. It might be different for somebody else, but that's the thought that allowed me to, and I'm not going to say that I haven't had my moments where I struggled with alcohol and smoking for years. And, it never was a problem until this last 33 months where I was like, it'd be really cool if I could go get a bottle of Jack and a pack of smokes and sit on my back porch and get drunk on a skunk and smoke my brains out. Did I do it?
Right.
No, because, this is what the enemy loves to do. Nobody will know. If you go do that, nobody will know.
Yeah.
I'll know. God will know.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that matter. But the enemy's good at what he does. And he likes to make you think that, hey, no big deal. Nobody will know.
Yeah.
God will know. And that's the one that matters the most to me.
Yeah.
How are you guys today? How's the family today?
Julie and I are doing well. God has, through the book, there's a lot of healing in writing that book. There was a lot of things that I put in that book that a lot of people probably don't know about. A lot of things that I put in that book about, just how I dealt with things on a daily. Like I talked about, getting up is easy until it's not. Going to work is easy until it's not. Standing up out of a chair, it's easy until it's not. Everything's easy until it isn't.
Right.
And what's that mean? So, the simplest things, when something like that happens, become hard. And so you got to figure out a way using God as your strength to get through every single. I mean, there was mornings that I would lay with Julie for 45 minutes, curled up in a ball, crying like a baby. And that was happening daily in the beginning. That was happening daily. I would literally lay in bed and cry for 45 minutes. And then all of a sudden I'd say, okay, God, get up. And I just get up. I mean, I'd want to stay in bed all day. I mean, there was a couple of Sundays and a couple of days I didn't go to work. I didn't go to church because I couldn't get out of bed. Because I didn't want to breathe. Yeah. But at the end of the day, if you don't think people are watching you, and I'm not saying, I did it because, I was afraid of what people would think. That's not what I was afraid of. I was afraid people would react differently than what they should if they saw me not being able to get through what I need to get through.
Right.
If they saw me not being able to rely on God and get through what I need to get through, then that might make them quit. And I don't want to see anybody quit.
No.
So that's why I want to keep moving forward. And that's why I want to keep focusing forward on what God had for me and what he has for me now. And that's why I'm not quitting now. I mean, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. And I'm just being straight with you. This planting this church is the hardest thing I've ever done.
Through everything, the good times, the bad, up to where you're at now, because there's a big movement, atheist movement in the world, and they're getting bolder. Did you ever fight a spirit of atheism going through all this?
No,
never did.
Absolutely not. No,
okay.
No.
I know a lot of times this what you and how Satan works. He can bring those thoughts in your mind and work on you. But, like you said, everybody handles things differently, and a lot of times people they go that dark question, And I didn't know if you did or not.
It was never. I never had any thoughts of atheism or apostasy or being an agnostic or anything like that. I fought all that when I was younger.
Okay.
When I was doing my 20 years of running, I went through all that back then,
Gotcha.
So obviously when I'm sitting in that church and I'm snot crying like a baby because I feel the Holy Spirit just beat me up left and right, telling me that, hey, dummy, you've spent 20 years away. It's time to come home. All that stuff. I didn't need to worry about any of that anymore because Satan knows he can't use that on me anymore because that doesn't work.
Yeah.
No, he tries to use all the old things that I used to have fun with. He tries to throw those back out. Well, wouldn't it feel better if you just went and did this now?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it feel better if you just went out and did this now? You can still do what you're doing, but you can do this now. That's what he does now. And I'm not going to do that.
Falling for it. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
But you got to admit, he's good at his job.
Oh, he's been doing it for thousands of years. So yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, he is, absolutely. 100%.
So writing the book, was that something that helped you get through some of this?
Without a doubt. I didn't know how it was going to come out, to be honest with you. I didn't know what I was going to write and how it was. Basically, I wrote about my day to day. I wrote about how.
Were you keeping a journal during this time?
I still keep a journal. I've been journaling I was journaling, since 2015, but it was pretty sporadic. I actually have journals that I sell, believe it or not. They're called First Focus. And I've talked about them on my show. It's a First Focus journal. It's just a little book about like this. I might have one.
Yeah, let's see what one looks like.
Yeah, here we go. This is my personal copy. So there you go. First Focus. That's my personal copy. And as you can see, sorry about the light. I can get pretty busy with it, or I can do one paragraph with it.
Sure.
But yeah, this is the journal First Focus. We sell them for $25. I recommend it to everyone. I try and journal every single day.
Where would somebody get something like that?
You can get it from me.
Do you have a website or?
I do have a website, Will Ramsey Speaks. I sell it on there.
Okay.
And then they can also private message me as well.
All right.
It's $25 plus shipping. If you're local, then it's just the $25. But if you live out of state or we got to ship it to you, then it's 25 plus shipping. We don't typically charge taxes on those. I'm gonna start pre-selling the book. I've got a Stripe account set up, but I got to figure out how to get it attached to my website. WillRamseySpeaks.com is my website because I'm working on becoming a professional speaker as well and sharing my story that way. As far as how basically the journey that it's been dealing with the loss of Brock and dealing with addiction and dealing with those different things. Because like I said, Brock was addicted since he was 14 years old. So that was something that he battled. He was in and out of rehab. I probably think 6 or 7 times. And actually almost died in my arms once in my house. So, I mean, that's, there was a couple different overdoses that we dealt with where he almost died. So it's not for the, dealing with an addict is not for the faint of heart.
Right.
And I feel for all those parents that I met a parent today that 79 years old has got a son that's our age that's addicted to heroin and has a bunch of health problems.
Drug, man.
It's terrible. It's absolutely from Satan.
Yeah.
From the pits of hell. I mean, it's the nastiest drug on the planet.
I know quite a few friends that have succumbed to not only heroin but alcohol even, and it's crazy how that gets a hold of folks and just takes them down.
Yep.
Mm.
Yep.
One of my old pastors in Knoxville, Tennessee, he actually used to run, and he laid there in the bed with a needle hanging out of his arm, and that was his God moment, and that that happens. But one of my buddies also, he overdosed on heroin. I believe they had to give him the Narcan. What you said earlier is it hits home, real close to home, and a lot of people don't even realize what's going on around them.
Right.
Got a buddy that just got out of rehab, and you start looking around you and you realize how close all these people are to you. And so, you want to help, you want to do things, and sometimes your hands are just tied. And I know how that feels. You want to reach out and help and change people, and sometimes you're not able to do that. And I can't imagine what you've been through with that. That's rough.
Some of the best help that you can give, I counsel people with the help with when somebody loses somebody, and some of the best help you can give somebody that's lost a child is just to sit with them, believe it or not.
Yeah.
People get, oh, it's awkward. Well, no, it's not. If you just go and sit with them, you don't have to say a word. There's nothing. So this is how I tell people, when, especially in the beginning with me, I had all these people would come and tell me, he's in a better place, or he isn't in pain anymore, or he's not dealing with the addiction anymore. And they mean well. And I'm not mad at people for saying those kinds of things. I mean, they truly mean well. Sometimes less is more in that situation. And honestly, hey, I'm praying for you. And then just sit down and be quiet.
Yeah.
And truly, I mean, that's, honestly, I had a lady that came and saw me. She came to the house. She brought us food. This was a few days after Brock died. And she came to the house. She brought us food. She walked in the door. Julie was at work, I think, or she went somewhere. And this woman gave me a hug, and I'll never forget it as long as I live. I mean, she just hugged me. She didn't say anything. She just hugged me.
Yep.
And that's exactly what I needed at that moment, was just somebody to hug me. And she sat down, and I don't think we said 4 words the whole time she was there. And I thanked her for bringing the food, and she left. And she still goes to engage, but I mean, and they're a wonderful family, and we love them dearly. But I mean, that was literally not. I don't think they'd go into engage for a month at that moment. And they dropped off food. She came in, she hugged me, and sat there with me for about a half an hour, and then she left. And that was probably some of the best time that I had with somebody right after he passed that I can think of, was just the fact that somebody sat there and just was there.
Yeah.
So that's how I advise people is, if you know somebody that's lost a child, or somebody just go sit with them. Just be there in their presence, and they know someone's there. Yeah. Because what people don't realize is the first couple of days or couple of weeks, you're deluged with all this stuff. People are reaching out and sending messages and all these different things. And guess what? After the funeral's over with, it goes silent. I mean, all of a sudden it's like everybody else is back to their normal lives, and you're out there on an island by yourself.
Yep.
And so don't forget about folks, because they're still going through it. I'm sitting there a year and a half into my counselor, and she said, "Will, you're still fresh in this." I said, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Year and a half in, it's still like it happened yesterday for you."
Right.
She said, "You don't get out of full blown grief until 3 years afterwards. And some people don't even get out of it then."
Yeah.
So 3 years is I forget what she called it, but it was some sort of grief, but it was like, the initial grief stage, you don't get out of until 3 years, a minimum of 3 years after it happens. If you lose a child, I mean, it rewires your entire brain.
I can imagine. How does she feel about you writing this book, your counselor that you're seeing?
I'm not seeing her anymore. She's up in Ohio, but she was very excited.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the book I'm praying helps someone. I mean, I'm praying it's gonna make an impact for somebody. That's the whole reason why I wrote it. I wanted to hopefully bring somebody to Jesus. I mean, that's a lot of people go the other direction when they lose a child, and my prayer is that somebody that thought they should go the other direction will come back.
So
that's the prayer.
Give us a you say you hope it brings somebody to Jesus. Give us a little synopsis of what the book is.
So it's obviously the title, A Father's Journey Through Darkness, Growth from the Loss of a Son. It's basically tells about how God brought me from the day that Brock died till now. Basically walks step by step about how, like I talked about the easy things being hard and how I got through that. How he's opened doors to things that I thought I would never do, even in the middle of the worst pain in my entire life, like this. If you guys would have asked me to do this 5 years ago, I'd have told you no. Just because I'm, not a Facebook Live guy, not a podcast guy, not a, I don't really have anything to talk about. Whatever the reason was, I would have given you a reason. I would have said no. God has opened all these doors, even in the midst of my pain. And that's basically what this book is about, is if you let God allow you to focus forward, and that's really what it's all about. There's a whole chapter dedicated just to focus forward. If you let God focus you forward, then there's no telling what you're going to be able to do. There's no telling where you're going to go. I mean, if you'd asked me 3 years ago if I was going to write a book, I'd have told you you're out of your mind. If you'd talked to me the week before Brock died about doing Facebook Lives every other day, I told you you're out of your mind. I actually thought about doing something called the Morning Word with Will before Brock died, and I was like, nah, that's never going to fly. And after Brock died, God said, do the Morning Word with Will. I was like, okay, well, how's this going to work? He said, don't worry about it. Just do it. Okay. You sure? It's like, yeah. Okay. So here I am, 413 is tomorrow.
Okay.
The 413th episode is tomorrow.
That's awesome. Congrats.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are you getting a lot of reach through folks with that?
I seem to be. I mean, I always have, it's funny. I was like, I always think, because I don't, it's funny. I look at the amount of people that watch, and it's only usually 3 or 4 or 5 people and on the lives, and, but I'll always get a message. Somebody always, hey, this one helped me today, or, I'm so glad you did this one today, or, and then all of a sudden I'll see somebody on there that's never watched before, or I'll see somebody else that's, and hey, I've seen you on Facebook, and, so, I mean, is it, you know what I'm saying? So it's, am I reaching thousands of people? I think so.
Yeah.
But it's never been about me, and it's never going to be about me.
Right.
It's always been about Jesus. It's always been about sharing God's word. And the big thing, the other thing about MV about the book is it's about relative things like right now. Like if you watch my morning's words, and I think you have,
I have. Yep.
I try to do on relevant things that people are going through. Like kind of like what I went through. I had a really bad day today, and I'm just being honest. I have a good day today. I lost my dad last year this day, and I had COVID. Dad had been dealing with cancer for 14 months. And had started going downhill about 3 weeks before this. And the plan was I was going to go up and see him as he passed. And I caught COVID on the 1st of December. And he started going south on the 2nd. And the 3rd was basically the day he started transitioning. And the 4th, he died. And I had COVID on the 1st. And I couldn't go up. And so, so today I kind of woke up and just was not having a good morning. I was having such a bad morning that I almost didn't go to church this morning at my sponsor church. And today was supposed to be the first day I was supposed to go. So almost didn't go. And, it's funny. God knows what you need when you need it. So I went ahead and made myself go, like I said, when, easy things are easy until they're not. So I made myself go to church, and I'm very glad that I did. But that's what the book is about, is just basically, you know, using God to make yourself do things that you wouldn't normally do and getting through things that you wouldn't normally get through. And so it's always going to be about God, and it's always going to be about how God gets you through things. So tomorrow morning, I'm probably going to talk about, you know, pain and how to get through it. And, you know, that's what the Morning Word with Will tomorrow, or the Word of Hope, the Word of Hope with Will, that's what it's called now. That's what tomorrow morning is probably going to be about. So it's never about me. And a church or anything like that shouldn't be about a person. It should be about the gospel. It should be about Jesus. It should be about God's word. And that's what it's about.
Did one of you mention an availability date on the book, or is it still in the?
It is going to be February 11th of 2023 is when the release date's going to be. That is the 3-year date of Brock's passing. You can pre-buy it, but the actual sale date or the release date is going to be that date.
Where do you pre-buy it at?
Well, I mentioned I've got a Stripe account set up, but I got to figure out how to tie it into my website.
Okay. Yeah, no worries.
I'm trying to kind of do all. This is all kind of new stuff to me.
Sure.
So I'm trying to kind of get all this together. That's kind of what I'm working on during the days. I'm working at. So my job right now, I was working at an RV dealership, but I've since left that, and basically the church is my full-time position right now. And then I'm doing I partnered with an F&I product provider for dealerships called Dealer Sent Services. And so I'm providing F&I products to dealerships like service contracts, gap insurance, those types of things, because there's companies that provide those, and that's who I work for. They're the fastest growing product provider in the industry. Ascent Dealer Services is the name of the company. I'm super excited that I partnered with them. That's basically my part-time gig, and the church is my full-time gig now. So,
all right. Waylon, you got anything else?
Unless you got some questions for me, no. I mean, you know, all I can tell you is that following Jesus is the way to go, and you know, he'll get you through whatever difficulty you're dealing with in your life. He's brought me through 33 months of hell. And it's, you know, I used to tell people, you know, when you're walking through that dark tunnel, it may look like a train coming at you, but it's the light of Jesus that you see at the end, not a train, if you let it. So
that's good.
Mm.
Do you think you'll ever peak back around Huber Heights again?
So honestly, I'll be there the 15th through the 19th of this month. I mean, you know, there's nothing says we couldn't be back up in that area again. Why do you ask, Waylon?
Well, just to meet you, have some coffee.
I'll be up there. I'll be up there in a couple weeks. So, I mean, we could try and work something out then.
The 15th through the 19th?
Yes. Yep. Yes, sir.
Okay. After the broadcast, I'll have to figure out a way to get in touch with you.
Okay. Not a problem. I can shoot my number to MV and he can send it over to you.
That sounds good.
All right. Pastor Ramsey, thank you for joining us tonight. I appreciate it. Thank you for sharing that story. That's a tough story to share, but I know there's somebody out there that's taken something from that, and they'll be able to put it into their practice in life. So thank you for sharing that. It's tough.
You're
welcome.
Yeah, your ministry is in our prayers, brother. I know you're ground up, so it's
definitely keep Hope City Church in your prayers. Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it, guys.
Good to meet you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. You guys have a great night.
You too.